My name is Claire Whitman, and I'm 29 years old. 4 minutes into my own wedding reception, in front of 140 guests, my mother walked up to me at the sweetheart table, leaned down like she was going to kiss my cheek, and slapped me across the face instead. Hard enough that my ears rang. Hard enough that the DJ cut the music. My new husband stood up so fast his chair hit the floor. My mother straightened her dress, looked around at every stunned face in that reception hall and said, "She knows what she did." Nobody moved. I sat there with a red handprint rising on my cheek in my wedding dress, and I didn't cry. I didn't slap her back. I just looked at her and said, "You have no idea what's coming." 6 days later, my mother sat in a courtroom, raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, and by the end of that afternoon, she'd confessed to something that had nothing to do with me refusing to sign a piece of paper and everything to do with 4 years of stealing from a woman who trusted her more than anyone alive. Before I get into it, if you're new here, take a second to like and subscribe, but only if stories about people who finally stop protecting the people who hurt them are the kind of thing you need today. Drop your city and the time where you're watching below. I read every single one. Let me take you back about 8 months, to the day I first noticed something was wrong. I'm a forensic accountant. I audit financial records for a living, mostly for a regional bank in Columbus, Ohio, tracing discrepancies other people are hoping nobody ever finds. It's not glamorous work. Spreadsheets, wire logs, bank statements, the boring paper trail that decides who actually owns what. I mention this because it matters for everything that happened after. I wasn't just my mother's daughter that day in the courtroom. I was the one person in my family who knew exactly how to read the numbers she thought nobody would ever check. My grandmother, Ruth Calloway, is 81. She raised my mother alone after my grandfather died young, worked 31 years as a school secretary, and never spent a dollar she didn't have to. She has a modest but real nest egg, a pension, some savings, a small trust her own mother left her decades ago. 2 years ago, Nana started forgetting things. Small things at first. Where she put her glasses. Whether she'd already called me that week. Her doctor started using the word mild cognitive decline at her checkups, gently, the way doctors do when they're trying not to frighten anyone. My mother, Diane, stepped in immediately. She got herself named power of attorney. She started managing Nana's accounts, her bills, her medications. Everyone in the family said what a good daughter she was. I said it too, at first. I started noticing the numbers didn't add up the way a good daughter's bookkeeping should. It began with a birthday card. Nana sent me one in March with a check inside for $50. Same as every year since I was a kid. Except this year, out of habit, I logged into my own banking app to deposit it and noticed the routing information routed through an account I didn't recognize, an account linked to Nana's trust. But with my mother listed as a cosigner with full withdrawal rights, opened only 4 months earlier. I didn't think much of it that week. I filed it away the way you file away a loose thread. Then I filed it away again the next month, when I helped Nana clean out a drawer and found a bank statement showing a $12,000 withdrawal from her trust account. Memo line blank. No explanation anywhere. Nana didn't remember it. When I asked my mother about it at dinner, she said, casual as anything. Oh, that's just for her care costs down the line. I'm handling it. I said, okay. I am, by profession, someone who does not say okay when the numbers don't add up. I just didn't say it out loud yet. Over the next several months, I quietly pulled every record I was legally entitled to as a family member and eventual co-beneficiary of the trust. What I found wasn't one withdrawal. It was a pattern, smaller amounts, some under $1,000 so they wouldn't trigger the bank's automatic reporting threshold, moved out roughly every 6 weeks for almost 4 years. Over $190,000 total, routed first into a joint account, then split off into transfers with vague memo lines, like home repair and family loan. Nana's actual living expenses, her assisted living deposit, her medications were a fraction of what had left that account. My mother wasn't managing Nana's money, she was draining it. I didn't confront her right away. If you've ever found out someone you love has been lying to you for years, you understand why. Part of me wanted to be wrong. So I hired an estate attorney named Susan Cole, someone with no connection to my family, and I quietly handed her everything. Every statement, every transfer log, every discrepancy I documented in a spreadsheet with dates and amounts down to the cent. Susan told me what I already suspected, but hadn't let myself say out loud. This wasn't disorganized bookkeeping. This was financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and under Ohio law, it was a felony. I filed a formal report with Adult Protective Services in April. A guardianship petition followed a few weeks later, asking the probate court to review whether my mother should remain trustee of Nana's estate. My mother didn't know any of this yet. My wedding was in June. Here's the part I'm still not proud of, but I'll tell you honestly. 2 days before the wedding, my mother called me in tears, asking me to sign a new power of attorney document, one that would give her authority over a small trust my own late grandfather had left specifically for me. Just to simplify things for the family while Nana's estate gets sorted out, she said. I understood immediately what she was actually asking. She wanted my signature on paper before the court hearing, so that if the guardianship petition succeeded, and she lost control of Nana's money, she'd already have quiet access to mine. I told her no. She asked again the morning of the wedding, standing in my childhood bedroom while I was getting my hair done, and I told her the truth for the first time, that I already knew about the withdrawals, that I'd already filed a report, and that the hearing was already scheduled. I asked her to please, please not do anything at my wedding that we'd both regret. She smiled and told me not to be dramatic. 4 hours later, she slapped me in front of everyone I love. If you've ever had someone in your family choose their own cover-up over your happiest day, I want to hear about it. Type "I understand" in the comments below. And stay with me, because the courtroom part is where everything actually comes apart. The guardianship hearing was already on the docket for that Thursday, 6 days after the wedding. I hadn't planned it that way. The court date had been set weeks earlier, long before I ever imagined I'd be walking into it with a fading bruise on my cheekbone that the makeup couldn't quite cover. Susan Cole represented Nana's interests. My mother hired her own attorney, a man named Gerald Finch, who spent most of his opening statement describing what a devoted, self-sacrificing daughter Diane had always been. My mother sat at the respondents' table in a navy blazer, hands folded, the picture of composure. Susan laid out the financial records methodically, exhibit by exhibit, the transfer logs, the joint account opened without Nana's documented consent, the pattern of withdrawals timed just under the reporting threshold. Then she called me to the stand. I walked the judge through the spreadsheet I'd built over 8 months, date by date, dollar by dollar, the same way I'd walk a client through a fraud audit. I wasn't there to be my mother's daughter that afternoon. I was there to be the accountant who found the discrepancy. Then Susan called my mother. For the first 20 minutes, Diane held her story together. Care costs, family loans, informal arrangements Nana had supposedly approved before her memory declined. Susan asked her to explain one specific transfer, $8,400 moved out of the trust 3 weeks before my wedding, memo line reading venue deposit. My mother said it was a loan to help pay for the wedding, that Nana had wanted to contribute. Susan placed the actual venue contract in front of her, paid in full, months earlier, by my husband and me, out of our own savings. There was no venue deposit left to make. The room went very quiet. My mother looked at the document for a long moment, and something in her face just gave out. She admitted it right there on the stand. Not all of it at once, it came out in pieces. The way confessions do when the person making them has been holding their breath for years. She admitted the joint account was opened without Nana fully understanding what she was signing. She admitted the withdrawals had gone toward her own mortgage, a car payment, and, in the months before the wedding expenses she'd told everyone were coming from her and my father's savings. And when Susan asked her, almost as an aside, why she'd struck me in front of a room full of witnesses 6 days earlier, my mother said, quietly, that she'd panicked. That I'd told her at the wedding I already knew and had already reported her, and in that moment, all she could think about was that everyone was about to find out what kind of person she really was, and she wanted, for one more day, for none of them to know. The judge removed her as trustee that afternoon and appointed a licensed fiduciary in her place. The Franklin County Prosecutor's Office picked up the case for criminal charges of financial exploitation of an elderly person a few weeks later. My mother eventually pleaded to a lesser felony count, was ordered to pay full restitution, and received probation with community service, since it was a first offense and she was, in the judge's words, cooperative once confronted with the evidence. Here's what happened after, in the months that followed, because I know some of you want to know it didn't just end in that courtroom. My father, who had known nothing about any of it, moved out within weeks. Not out of anger at me, but because he told me later he could no longer live with someone who had lied to him for that long, about something that mattered that much. My mother's sister, my Aunt Pam, was the one person on that side of the family who called me the week after the hearing, not to defend Diane, but to say she was sorry she hadn't asked harder questions sooner. Nana, for her part, doesn't fully understand everything that happened, and some days I'm grateful for that. What she does understand is that I'm the one who still visits every Sunday, the one who still brings her the crossword book she likes, the one who sits with her on the porch in the afternoons. She held my hand a few weeks ago and said, out of nowhere, "You always were the careful one." I don't think she meant it about my job. I think she meant it about something older than that. I do not talk to my mother. Not because a judge told her to stay away, though there is a no-contact order tied to the restitution agreement while it's active. I don't talk to her because I don't have anything left to say to someone who is willing to let me sign away my own money to protect a lie, and who chose, on the one day I asked her not to hurt me anyway, in front of everyone who came to watch me start a new life. Here's what I've learned, and it's the only thing I really want you to take from this. A slap heals in days. A confession under oath doesn't heal, it just finally tells the truth out loud, in a room where nobody gets to pretend anymore. I didn't go looking for my mother's downfall. I went looking for the truth, because I'm the kind of person who can't leave a discrepancy alone, and it turned out the truth was already sitting right there in the numbers, waiting for someone in the family who knew how to read them. That's my story. If someone you loved ever chose their own comfort over your safety, and you had to be the one to finally say, enough, I want to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me what that cost you. And if this stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that the truth always eventually gets called to the stand. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.